All right. Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Always ready to dive in. Let's do it.
Awesome. So today we're tackling something I think we can all relate to. Building those rock-solid relationships. The ones built on real intimacy and trust.
Yeah, the kind of connections that really make life richer, right?
Exactly. And you know me, I'm all about practical takeaways. So we're going deep on some communication research today.
Yeah,
Stuff you can actually use, like starting today.
love that. Practical strategies.
Absolutely. So to set the stage, we're looking to research a bunch of different studies all about how we communicate in relationships. And get this, the goal is to figure out what actually works for building that unshakable trust and deep emotional connection.
Sounds like a plan to me.
All right, so first things first, this whole idea of open and honest communication kept popping up.
Yeah, it's foundational, isn't it?
Totally. But here's the thing. It's not just about sharing your feelings, which we always hear, right? It's about sharing your needs too. Both. It's like a combo deal.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens. Think about it. When you only share your feelings, it can leave your partner kind of hanging.
Totally. Like, okay, I'm sad, now what?
Exactly. But if you say, I'm feeling sad and I need a hug or whatever it is you need, it gives them a way to actually support you.
Oh, I see. So it's like instead of just venting, you're actually giving them a way to meet your needs. Makes total sense.
It's about creating that safe space where you can be completely open without fear of judgment.
Which, let's be honest, that's what we all want. Right. That feeling of safety with someone.
100%.
Yeah.
And when you have that, it prevents all those little issues from turning into relationship ending blowouts.
Okay, that's huge. Now let's talk about emotional intimacy because, to be honest, that's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. But what does it really mean in a practical sense?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's easier to feel than to define, right? But I think the core of it is vulnerability. It's about allowing yourself to be truly seen, flaws and all, by your partner. But, and this is key, without attacking them or blaming them.
Okay, so it's not just about word vomiting all your deepest fears and insecurities. It's about being vulnerable in a way that actually brings you closer.
Right. It's like, how do you open up without just, going nuclear?
Yeah. How do you do that?
It's a balance, for sure. You have to be honest with yourself and your partner, but you also have to be mindful of how you're communicating.
Mindful. Okay.
It's about sharing those vulnerable parts of yourself with respect and, well, with love.
Got it. That makes so much sense. Now, speaking of communication, I got to confess something. I am so bad at truly listening sometimes.
Oh, come on. We've all been there.
No, seriously, I catch myself halfway through someone's sentence already planning my response. Not even really hearing what they're saying.
I think we're all guilty of that from time to time.
But how much are we missing when we do that?
Oh, a ton. Active listening is like the secret weapon of strong relationships.
Okay, tell me more about this secret weapon.
Well, think about how good it feels when someone really listens to you. They're not just waiting for their turn to talk. They're actually trying to understand your perspective. It makes you feel seen, validated, heard.
Yeah, sometimes just having someone really hear you out is way more helpful than any advice they could give.
Exactly. And there are specific things you can do to become a better active listener.
Okay, hit me with them.
Well, one technique is mirroring.
Mirroring. Literally looking in a mirror.
No, not quite. It's about reflecting back what you've heard to make sure you're understanding correctly. So you might say, it sounds like you're feeling frustrated because you feel like your needs aren't being met.
Oh, I see. So it's not about parroting back their words. It's about reflecting the meaning and the emotion behind what they're saying.
You got it. And that's super powerful because it shows them that you're really trying to get where they're coming from.
And that builds trust. Okay, I'm liking this.
And then there's validation.
Tell me about it.
It's about acknowledging that their feelings are valid, even if you don't necessarily agree with their perspective.
Okay, so even if you think they're overreacting or whatever, you're still acknowledging that their feelings are real to them.
Exactly. You're not dismissing their experience. You're honoring it.
This reminds me of something from the research, the couples dialogue strategy, they called it.
Oh, yeah. That's a great example of how these techniques can be put into practice.
Yeah, it felt almost like a formula for healthy communication. Can you break it down for us?
Sure. The couples dialogue strategy is all about creating a structured conversation where both partners feel heard and understood. It's like taking turns being the speaker and the listener's job is to use those active listening techniques we talked about: mirroring, validation, and empathy.
Ah, empathy. So you're not just reflecting the words, but also trying to tune into their emotional state.
Right. It's about trying to see the world through their eyes.
Wow, this is making me realize how often I just jump in with solutions or try to fix things instead of just listening and empathizing.
It's a common trap. We want to be helpful, but sometimes the best thing we can do is just listen.
Okay, truth. Now, here's something I didn't expect to see in the research: the importance of self-respect and self-image in all of this.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Okay, help me think about it, because at first glance, it seems a little, I don't know, self-centered maybe? Like, shouldn't the focus be on the other person?
Here's the thing. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Ooh, I like that.
If you don't value yourself, it's going to be really hard to show up as your best self in a relationship.
Because you're coming from a place of lack.
Exactly. If you're constantly putting yourself down or feeling insecure, it's going to affect how you communicate with your partner.
So you might be more likely to be needy or defensive or even resentful.
Right. It's all connected.
Okay, so working on your own self-esteem is actually a way to be a better partner.
Absolutely. When you feel good about yourself, you're more likely to communicate from a place of confidence and love, and that creates a much healthier dynamic in the relationship.
That's powerful. Okay, I'm getting it now. Speaking of confidence, what about assertive communication? That was another big theme in the research.
Such an important skill, and one that a lot of people misunderstand.
Yeah, I'll admit, I'm one of them. I always thought being assertive meant being aggressive, like always trying to win arguments or something.
Not at all. Assertiveness is about expressing your needs and boundaries clearly and directly, but with respect. It's about finding that sweet spot between being passive and aggressive.
Okay, so it's not about steamrolling over the other person. It's about advocating for yourself in a way that honors both of your needs.
Exactly. And those I statements we were talking about earlier, super helpful for assertive communication.
Oh, yeah, like instead of saying, you never listen to me, you would say, I feel ignored when you check your phone while I'm talking.
Perfect example. It's about owning your experience without blaming the other person.
And isn't that a recurring theme here? Taking responsibility for your own feelings and needs.
100%. It's so much more effective than trying to change or control the other person.
This is all making so much sense. Now, how does this all tie into understanding your partner's point of view?
Right.
Because let's be real, that can be really hard when you're in the heat of an argument.
It is, but it's crucial for building empathy and resolving conflicts constructively.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? Like, what are some concrete tips?
One thing the research suggests is to avoid using absolutes, like always or never.
Oh yeah, like you always leave your dishes in the sink.
Exactly. Those kinds of statements just put the other person on the defensive.
Because it feels like an attack, right?
Right. Instead, focus on expressing how their actions make you feel. So instead of you always leave your dishes in the sink, you might say, I feel disrespected when I come home and the kitchen is a mess.
Okay, so it's about shifting the focus from blame to understanding.
Exactly. It's about creating a dialogue where you can both feel heard and validated.
Speaking of tricky conversations, let's talk about forgiveness.
Ah, yes. The big one.
Because we all know it's important for moving on and rebuilding trust, but it can be so hard to actually do. Like, how do you forgive someone who hurt you deeply?
It's definitely not easy. And I think it's important to remember that forgiveness is a process, not a switch you flip. It takes time.
So don't beat yourself up if you're not there yet.
Exactly. And it's also important to understand that forgiveness isn't about condoning the other person's actions. It's not about saying what they did was okay.
So what is it about then?
It's about releasing the resentment and pain that you're holding on to.
So you can move forward.
Yes. It's a choice you make for your own well-being, not for the other person.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
It's about reclaiming your own power and choosing peace over bitterness.
That's beautiful. And it ties into this idea of trust, right? Because forgiving someone is essentially saying, I'm willing to be vulnerable with you again.
Exactly. It's a leap of faith, but it's essential for rebuilding intimacy.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Open communication, emotional intimacy, active listening, self-awareness, assertive communication, understanding your partner's point of view,
Yeah.
forgiveness. And I think it all culminates in this idea of constructive conflict management.
It all comes together, doesn't it?
It does. But I got to ask, can conflict ever really be constructive?
Absolutely. Conflict is inevitable in any relationship. It's how you approach it that makes all the difference.
Okay, so how do you go from screaming matches to productive conversations?
Remember all those communication skills we talked about? Those are your tools. Active listening, empathy, I statements, focusing on needs instead of blame.
So it's not about avoiding conflict, it's about navigating it in a way that actually strengthens the relationship.
Right. It's about seeing conflict as an opportunity to learn and grow together.
Wow, I'm feeling pretty inspired right now, not gonna lie. What about you? What's the one thing that stands out most to you from all of this?
For me, it's the interconnectedness of it all. These qualities, self-awareness, respect, vulnerability, a willingness to learn and grow, they all build on each other and create this foundation for a truly fulfilling and loving relationship.
That's such a great point. And for our listeners out there, what's one small change you can make today to start putting these ideas into practice?
Maybe it's trying out those I statements or really focusing on listening without interrupting or working on setting healthier boundaries.
I love that. Pick one thing and just start there.
Small changes can have a big impact over time.
Absolutely. Relationships are a marathon, not a sprint.
Be patient with yourself and your partner.
And remember, you don't have to be perfect to have an amazing relationship.
Just keep learning and growing together.
That's it for our deep dive today. We hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you next time for more relationship insights.
See you then.